He is Fred Stoeker, the co-author of the best-selling book Every Man's Battle, a series of books, sold over 1 million copies, 30 different languages, and his recent book is Battle On, Battle Over. Here's our conversation. Joining us now is our guest, Fred Stoeker, from his home in Des Moines. Fred, thanks for hanging out with us.
Well, Fred, it's nice to meet you virtually. I guess my first curiosity, when you come up with your facts, because to be an expert, you've done some work, you've done some research. Obviously, this is a field that the only research I've done is through my growing up and my living,
right,
and my discovery or my inquisitive nature as a kid. And I think it's one road that every kid travels on. You know, when you start talking about sex, or you start talking, you see attractive women, or what gets your attention. But how do you all, or you in particular, how do you grab these numbers? How do these numbers pulled, the data that you're able to pull? That's when you can say approximately 63% of men and 55% of women watch porn regularly, how are those numbers pulled?
Honestly, I'm not the one that pulls those numbers. I mean,
I figured
are
you didn't.
companies like George Barna and Focus on the Family that do those kinds of surveys. I personally, I do most of my research reading scientists, about how the brain reacts to porn and some of that sort of a thing, because, I had a really strong problem with this. And there was a time where I would have done anything, read anything to get free. And it just stayed a really interesting thing to me, because I knew I'd have to one day help my kids stay free. So I just find those books on the brain, on our sexuality, to be very fascinating.
Well, no, that's very cool, because they are fascinating, because, in complete transparency, I can tell you that, yeah, I've looked at porn, and I've gotten to a place where, first of all, I'm a man of addiction, so anything I pick up and stay with, it's got a good chance of latching on. I've got I've had multiple challenges with addictions. And I mean, from anything from buying a shirt, like the shirt you have on, if I like that shirt, I'm going to go buy 5 of them just in different colors.
Well,
but
you
I
can
find
have this one if you want. I mean,
I don't think it's going to fit. Maybe, I don't know what. Anyway, I find it interesting, because in complete transparency, I don't know. I have some history in masturbation. I have some history of looking at porn. I'm not going to sit here and throw shade. So I do get it, and I do know how I felt when the first time I picked up a Playboy magazine and started leafing through it. And of course, that was good for a while, and then, oh my gosh, there's a magazine called Penthouse. Well, that ratchets it up a little bit more. I mean, and then you just continue to ratchet up till you can get yourself into places that, I mean, actually, where you got to look away.
And actually, with streaming porn now, Clint, you can actually get yourself into places where you're looking at things that you would have never conceived of on your own, had that not been put before your face. I mean, some of these things are so gross and so far outside really what I would consider to be normal human experience, that people are seeing things that no one's ever really seen.
I love the name of the book. I mean, Every Man's Battle, and the series of them. I mean, it's spot on. And today, I can't imagine, because you know what? Back in the day, for me right now, the one thing we're dealing with in sport, and I work with young people now as well.
Yes.
Our young players in rookie ball, they can be from 18 to 25 in the minor leagues. Most of them are in that age group. And porn, there's no doubt. But the other one's gambling. And I'm not trying to take us off court, but I do believe those two right now are the biggest crushers of young males that are out there, because there's not a game you can't bet on. I know high school kids at some of the places I go to, some of the coaches call me, they've caught them on their phones betting on the games, betting on other games. And then the porn thing, it's one click, it's here, or you can get clickbaited, you can get somewhat fooled into grabbing something and getting onto it. And it's kind of funny, because I used to say I'd be the guy that got fooled, but then I'd be fooled for about 5 minutes before I decided it wasn't good to be fooled anymore.
Right. No, I agree with that. And actually gambling, it's funny that you say that because I was just reading an article tonight about Caitlin Clark and the ability to bet on her and her future. So, I mean, I can bet on whether she's going to have average 21 points a game next year. I can bet on how many 3-point shots she's going to make next year. And I just look at this and I go, who bets on this stuff? I mean, you're going to be sure to go broke. No one could possibly know those things. But the thing about it, Clint, is that the same dopamine release, the same kind of chemistry that comes through this kind of addiction is the kind we're talking about with porn and masturbation. And so addictions are pretty consistent in what they do in the brain. And really all of them, a person needs to dump them out of their life, or you never get to the point where you're living a life of full integrity, and you never get to the point where you're what would you say, your faith is fully mature. And what I found once I got loose from the sexual sin, I was able to really have my faith and my spiritual strength take leaps forward into places I never thought I would be, because I always thought I was kind of a loser because of that, what I called a perversion with my sexual sin. And once I got out of that, I realized I wasn't a loser at all.
Right. No, we're all saved by grace, and we're all, we all come short in so many different areas.
Yep.
And then in my own life, I'm on the side now where I battled through addiction. Phil may or may not have told you my story, but I'm a recovering alcoholic. And when you say, I can relate those feelings of, okay, I'm not going to do it today, and then after I've done it, going, what just happened? I did it again.
Yes.
You know, there I am.
Boy, if I ever lived that, yes.
And it wasn't like, it wasn't the first thing I thought about when I got up in the morning, but it popped into my head at some time in the morning. And then you keep playing this game with yourself. No, I got this. I got this. No, it's no, I still got it. I'm halfway through the day. And then by 5 o'clock, I'm going, God, I'm a mess. Look at this. But today's, you used to have to sneak around to get porn. At least back when I was a kid, you had to sneak around. And then when you got it, you had to hide it. And now you may have to sneak around. I don't know. Do you sneak around on your phone? Not really. I mean, it's just boom, boom, and you're right there. And it's stuff that I couldn't imagine looking at when I was 12 or 13, but it's there. It's available. And I know it's real because as rough as I've, things I put myself through, two divorces, an alcohol addiction. I've caused a lot of collateral damage. In the last 10 years, I've had close to probably 10 guys reached out to me with this exact challenge right here, porn addiction. And I usually tell them, I can't, I understand. First of all, I can empathize to some degree, but I can't probably help you the places you need to be helped. But I can tell you what got me hooked, what caught me, what helped me get away, how I stay away. But the addiction part of it, as you said, it is so networked. I mean, it was a 12-step program for me, and I've talked to this guys, and once they get the counseling or they go where they need to go, it's a very similar step process that they've got to have a check and balance system. They've got to have accountability partners. They get to the point where they've got to come clean. There was a day when I wouldn't throw my phone to you and let you look at my phone. And now, my wife has my phone, my daughter has my phone. It's taken a long time, but I'm finally in that place where you can call free. Yeah. How did you find, what was the first time? Did you have a bottom? And when you hit that bottom, like, yes, where did you go?
Well, it's a little hard to talk about it, but I mean, it's because you're going to get emotional when you think back to that moment. And I had been, there were like 4 or 5 things that happened, boom, 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 that got my attention. Number one is the Holy Spirit was really getting after me on a couple of verses. Number one was Job 31:1. And that verse says, I have made a covenant with my eyes not to look lustfully at a girl. Well, and the thing is, if you go into Job 31:7, which is 7 or 8 verses later, it's very clear that he kept that promise. And and when I would read that verse, I'd go, what in the world? How did he do that? And what's a covenant with the eyes? The other verse, which is even worse, Clint, was Luke 6:46. And that's where the Lord says, why do you call me Lord, Lord, and not do what I say? And oh my word, I mean,
Yeah.
I would get chased by that in my mind constantly. And anyway, so the Lord was working to get my attention, but then there was a moment where I was driving down Merle Hay Road in Des Moines, and a couple other things had happened, and I had kind of said to myself, I gotta quit this. I've got to quit this. You know, this is going to change my life if I just quit this. Well, then I looked at this jogger going by, and um, boy, she didn't have much on, and boy, did she look good. And I lusted in my mind. And then I just burst into tears. I slammed my fist into the steering wheel and I just started screaming, not like a guy that's scared, but I'm gonna win, kind of a thing. And I just slammed my fist in the steering wheel and said, I can't live like this anymore. I won't live like this anymore. I'm going to figure out how to make that covenant with my eyes, and I'm going to win if I die trying. Well, it was just that moment. I mean, Clint, I had tried to quit many times, even before I was saved. Even back at Stanford,
Mhm.
I was hooked. But at that moment, I had fully engaged for the first time. And the great thing about that, Clint, is that when you fully engage, that's when the Holy Spirit can really come into your life and begin to reveal to you what you need to do. And it wasn't very long before he began teaching me the steps I had to take. And all of those steps are very practical. They're not, woo or
Right.
mystical. All you have to do is go into my book, Every Man's Battle, and by the time you close the cover, you'll know what to do. And that's the important thing.
Well, God, praise God. And I'm so happy that you found that freedom, because
Oh, yeah.
that old saying, what the smallest package in the world is a man wrapped up in himself. And then on top of that, what we're wrapped up in.
Yes.
Because, like,
And, I don't know if you know a guy named Ryan Pineda, but I was talking to him the other day, and I had just mentioned the phrase having sex with myself, which is another term I use for masturbation. And he just looked at me and he said, man, that sounds awful when you think about it in those terms, to have sex with yourself. Now, he wasn't saying that he had done anything or anything like
right.
that when he said that. He was just going, gosh, that's gross. And when you think back into your life and you think back, I mean, if you read my books, I pretty much am an open book, but I gotta tell you, there's probably 2% I haven't put in there because it's so embarrassing to me.
Sure.
I can't even stand to write it down, let alone let you read it, right?
Right. Right. And God knows it.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know, and
he
that's the
knows.
other thing, is we walk through these muddy waters and the ditches we get ourselves, and we don't, and then we try and hide them from everybody else.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
He's just looking at
There's
us going,
there,
really, really, really?
yeah, there's no bush big enough to hide behind on some of that stuff.
No.
I'm just grateful for grace, and the forgiveness is there. And once you get free, that's the real beautiful thing, because then God can promote you into new things. I mean, nobody ever thought Fred Stoeker was going to be an author. I mean, that just wasn't out there in anybody's thoughts. And yet here I am with 4 bestsellers, one that's a million seller. It's just crazy. But
Yeah.
once he gets hold of your life in the sense that you've surrendered and just said, look, I don't have to have all these other things. I just need you. Well, then you get to the point where he's got you where he wants you, and you're actually a servant and not just someone who's trying to look for good things from him.
All
Well,
right, now
there's one thing.
guys, I'm weighing in here. So I'm going to set up a scenario.
Okay.
Now, Fred, Clint is a coach who coaches coaches at
Yeah,
all levels.
I think that's an amazing job to have, Clint. Way to go.
And now you're going to coach the coach who coaches coaches on the next time he's traveling and someone in the baseball industry says, I'm sick of myself, I'm fed up. I need some simple advice. Please help. Don't tell anyone, but I need something from you
Oh,
right
yeah.
now. Fred, what's
Listen,
he say?
Well, first of all, let me just show you this book, Clint, because I don't know if you've seen this one. You've seen Every Man's Battle, but this is my latest book. It's called Battle On, Battle Over. And what I discovered in my own battle, Clint, was that there are actually a lot of sexual things that drive sexual sin, like right porn, streaming porn, all that. A girl walking by in the string bikini, all those things. Okay. But there are a number of things that literally drive sexual sin that are non-sexual. And that's where guys really get trapped, especially baseball players. I've talked to a number of minor league baseball players about this very thing. And this is what I asked them. I said, okay, I'll tell them, okay, some triggers of sexual sin are actually non-sexual, and I'll explain a little bit about it. And then I will say to them, okay, what was it like? Because one of them was a pitcher. What was it like when you would go out and get shelled for, you know, 8 runs in 3 innings? And what was it like to go back to your hotel room that night? Well, what he said was, you know, you just feel like the biggest loser. You think you might be losing your career. You feel like you don't even want to face the next day. And I would say, okay, what would you do then? And he would say, invariably, I would masturbate. And the thing is, when you masturbate, that brings a medication that soothes that wound, that stress, that pain. And what a coach has to do for someone like that who has come to him and said, hey, what do I do? The first thing, of course, is they've got to get educated. So they read a book like Battle On, Battle Over so they can understand how non-sexual triggers can create the sexual sin, because most guys don't make that connection and it's foggy to them. But once they understand that, then they are free, because those non-sexual triggers cannot trip them up again. I was talking to a guy about that once, and he said, you know, Fred, once you told me about non-sexual triggers, it has completely taken the fear out of my heart when it comes to my sexual sin, because now when I have a lot of stress at work and I feel these sexual cravings, I just say to myself, those aren't even sexual cravings. Those are non-sexual triggers. I don't have to do this. And he can turn away so easily. I've talked to players that are just, you know, they might have a couple of errors in a game that just kind of blow the game wide open for their teammates and lose. And it's that same sort of thing. So what I've always taught, for instance, my sons from very early on, that, you know, they need to understand that they need to take that pain, that stress, those wounds to the Lord instead of to porn, where they can get medication.
This is fascinating.
Have you ever heard any of your players talk about that, Clint, where they feel like the time where it's the biggest weakness for them is after they've had a rotten game, not a good one, for instance?
Yes, I've got one player it's ongoing, and I've got a former player, very good friend, that's ongoing. What are the non-sexual triggers? I'm fascinated. And I want you to give away, you know.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, I'm happy to share some. I
I'm
mean,
gonna buy
I
the
feel
I'm gonna
like,
buy the books. This
yeah,
is
the book
fascinating. And
is,
I knew
yeah, by the time you're done through the first 2 chapters, you'll know it inside and out. But for instance, father wounds, okay? My dad was a very rough guy towards me. He was a national champion and AAU heavyweight champion wrestler, okay?
wow.
And he always wanted me to be a wrestler. And about 9th grade, I quit. I just wanted to play football and baseball. Well, he never forgave me. And he never said he loved me. He never said, you're a man, Fred. You belong here in this world of men, shoulder to shoulder. And that used to really crush me. And I would use, and then he would come to not just my games, my practices, and just any mistake I made, rip me up. And until my teammates hated his guts. But the thing is that that created a lot of woundedness in me, a lot of shame in me, that I would use to medicate. And I never put those two together. Then another one would be financial stress. This is very common, where, you know, back then when I was a young father and, you know, I had a couple of kids and I was in full commission sales and I was trying to make it in the world of men and, you know, was having trouble making ends meet. Full commission sales is not for the faint-hearted. And what happened was when I really began to look at my life, I realized that I was tended to be still masturbating on the nights where my financial stress was the worst. And so what I began to do is take that to the Lord in prayer and turn my business and finances over to him. And it began to weaken that very quickly. And the thing is that when I was feeling just like, I'm no good, I'm a loser, I'm not much of a man, that's again when I would masturbate. Because, Clint, when you really look at what an orgasm does in a man's heart, it actually literally provides the feeling of false intimacy and false connection, but it's a genuine draw to a guy who feels lonely, disconnected, in pain. And so an orgasm can really be a draw when a guy is feeling worse about himself. And so, but if you think about it, you know, financial stress, there's nothing sexual about that, right? I mean, it's not a sexual trigger.
No, that makes a lot of sense, and there's so much commonality, you know, with the addictive of what happens.
I would be fascinated, Clint, after you read the first couple chapters of Battle On, Battle Over. I would be fascinated to have another conversation with you because I'd like to see how you would compare your alcoholism with this addiction. And I'll bet you there's a ton of non-sexual triggers when it comes to alcoholism as well.
Yeah, there are, and it becomes down to, you know, the challenge I would always have, in any of the things that, you know, especially with my alcohol addiction, I felt less than. I'd compare, you know, and if I didn't win the game on the field, I needed to win the game after the game, you know. Yes. I had to find a win somewhere, and it's so sad that the win would come down to, you know, getting hammered, or you know, in the case of or watching porn, or, you know, for those people that want to grab a drug to medicate, to numb themselves temporarily, because there is a temporary satisfaction. Okay, you don't feel all that angst, you don't feel the anxiety, you don't feel the loser mentality until it wears off and you're right back where you started from, but worse. For me,
you know, that I couldn't have said it better myself. That was really good, Clint. And that is the basis of the non-sexual trigger. And the way you said it, you're looking for a win. You had the loss in the day. Now you're looking for a win, something to make you feel good about yourself. And I really do feel like that's the concept behind it. And I didn't figure I would talk about it for very long before you knew exactly what I was talking about. Yeah, this
is crazy, and it's
I was just using different words, right?
We are, and the crazy part of it, it's a God wink as well, because God, through Phil, connected us.
Yes,
had this master plan that God's put in his lap for a while. There's no doubt. I've been reading from Nancy. He's been, you know, the things he's been sending out. I knew he was setting me up. I knew he had an ambush here somewhere.
Yes.
And the last thing I thought I would be talking about this afternoon in Spokane, Washington, was masturbation and porn with an expert. And I can't wait to call my wife tomorrow and say, honey, I did one a podcast. And she'll say, okay, which ball player did you talk to? And I go, haha, guess what I got for you today.
Don't hurt me. Don't hurt me.
No.
You know, please, don't.
You just tell her Fred Stoeker, the ball player, because I did used to play ball, and you can kind of squeak out of it. But
look, it makes us better. It makes us a better husband. It makes us a better father. It makes us a better friend. It gives us another opportunity to be the best version of ourselves. My wife knows my warts. And she knows all the warts. You know, it'd be like me telling her, well, I never went to a strip club. And she just looked at me like, really? Yeah, really? You know, no, I never masturbated to porn. Really?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, right.
I like your wife already.
She's she's something. But I mean, but this is making me grow. Another thing, one of my words 2 years ago, I pick a word every year, and instead of resolutions, I grab a word.
Okay.
And 2 years ago, my word was grow. I didn't want to let the old man in. I watched the movie The Mule. I listened to Toby Keith's song. I've got a 19-year-old son now who was younger at that time, a 21-year-old special needs daughter. I've got an older daughter that moved back home from Texas to get close to my mom and dad. There's so many cataclysmic things that were cool working on in my life. However, I was 65 and out of ball for 3 years. Yes, I'm back in a little bit, but it's different. I didn't want to just settle. And I'm thankful my wife has pushed me, but my son pushed me. And my word was grow. And I look back now 2 years ago from writing grow on a ball to where what's happened in the last year and a half, all the things I've walked through, having this conversation. I'm on the brink, on the edges. I'm writing a book right now at my age. The first time out. Yeah, it's exciting. But I found different ways to get the excitement that I used to seek through all the other ways.
Listen, Clint, that's what men do. I mean, once you rise up and you get rid of all that junk, then you can truly be a man and fight the great battles and live the great adventures. That's what you're doing.
And isn't it great to really find out what the definition of manhood is? Because I had other people's, I had my own, I had, guys I thought I was cool. And really, I've gotten to a better place as a manager, but I can remember early in my managerial career in Pittsburgh, we brought in Joe Ehrman, who wrote the book Inside Out Coaching, which talks about masculinity and toxic masculinity. And it was the first time he peeled back some layers for me that I was like, oh my, I did that. No, oh my gosh. Yeah, that happened to me. Or maybe some actions that I had, could have put another player or coach in an awkward or difficult position. And then just growing up to be a man, what it means biblically to be a man, what it means biblically to be the husband, what it means biblically to be the father and the friend. And
it clears everything up when you have a really good definition, doesn't it? Because anything that you have to decide on, you can just go, well, this either fits the definition or it doesn't. And you can just either walk away or throw your whole heart into it, right?
Absolutely. Phil, I need you to come. I got to take a break here. I'm getting goosebumps on my arms here. I don't know whether it's the caffeine or it's talking to Fred.
Well, fellas, we could do this for another half hour, easy. Fred, you could see we're very grateful for you joining us. We're going to say thank you and let you go.
Okay.
Fred, author of Every Man's Battle series of books, co-author, and his most recent book is Battle On, Battle Over. Fred, thanks for hanging out with us.